Hello, Bernard.
Hey, Leila. Want to read a poem?
Sure. I just opened The Problem by Jane Hirshfield. You are trying to solve a problem. You're almost certainly halfway done, maybe more. You take some salt, some alum, you put it into the problem. Its color goes from yellow to royal blue. You tie a knot of royal blue into the problem, as into a Peruvian quipu of colored string. You enter the problem's bodegas, its flea markets, souks. Amid the alleys of sponges and sweets, of jewelry, spices, and hair combs, you ponder which stall, which pumpkin or perfume is yours. You go inside the problem's piano. You choose 3 keys. One surely must open the door of the problem. If only you knew only this. Is the quandary edible or medical? A problem of reason or grief? It is looking back at you now with the quizzical eyes of a young bright dog, her whole body pitched for the patch. The dog wants to please. If only she could ascertain which direction, what object, which scent of riddle, and if the problem is round or elliptical in its orbit, and if it is measured in foot-pounds, memory, or meat.
We took several poems with us for this session, and they're very different one from each other, as we will see. Why did you want to start with this one?
I like this poem. I know how much you like Rainer Hirshfield. And I like this poem because in its structure, it's very much like what we're trying to do with this work, to sort of like understand the language used and the effect it has on us. And as we mentioned in the introduction of this masterclass, the fact that the language, the poetic language, is very much like trance language. I find that this poem really shows that.
Already at the beginning of this poem, if you look just at the 3 first verses, you're trying to solve a problem. You're almost certainly halfway done, maybe more. This is such a relief. You read that, you hear that, you make it part of your body. Yes, that's true. I am trying to solve a problem. I forgot which one. There are so many. But I'm trying to solve a problem. Yes, that's all my life I've been doing that. And then I read somebody telling me, even I'm telling myself, you're almost certainly halfway done.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah. Yes, it's true for us both. It's true for probably everyone. It certainly is true for our clients as well who come to see us. They're trying to solve a problem. And that's also why this poem is very interesting, is that we, it could be a session, or, you could start with, you're trying to solve a problem, and you know what? You're probably halfway done, Oh, what a relief.
That's what a good coach should always do. A good coach should start by saying, I believe you can do it. Yeah. I believe you're almost there. It's just you need a little, okay, whatever, we'll find that together, no problem. But yeah, I believe in you.
Yes, I think the client really needs to feel that this space created this field created by the coach and him is a space where the problem can be solved or can be on its way of being solved. It's almost like the human presence that meets everything that comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, the poem in some way is a human presence in itself. It's like the human presence that you experience by yourself. You can do that alone. You can also like give a poem to somebody and say, well, I'm asking you, just read that poem several times and see what happens to you. So it's a little bit the kind of relationship that you give, that is not a one-to-one relationship as we have in a normal coaching, but that is a relationship between the one who reads and the world that goes very deep.
Yes, it's a relationship, and also it's alive, or we make it alive, we give it a life by voicing it. I think it's also part of the work we do when we read these poems. Often I read it, and then you read it, and then we see what it does to us and what it changes. And then you can read it a few minutes afterwards, and it has already changed. And we discuss it, and things change as well. Just like she invites us to do in this poem, when she says, you add a little bit of salt and a little bit of alum, and it's like a recipe, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you make it a soup, and then of course it's going to change its color, it's going to change its smell, it's going to change. And so what brings the flexibility in this fixed map that the client brings with them, stuck because you have a fixed map. And what she does here is just exactly what we need to do as coaches.
Yeah, in this case, she's working a lot with, we would say hypnotic talk or confusion.
It is very playful, and we know playfulness is very much needed often in our sessions with our clients, and especially when we face a problem. Also in our lives, what would it look like if I put a little bit of playfulness into this? And what I like about this is, as you're saying, it opens more and more, and it gives us more space to be able to hold this problem from a different point of view. But also, it's somehow familiar. It's like she's taking us into this souk, these flea markets, and then all these sensory elements awaken, and it's like a dream. That doesn't make sense. Like all of a sudden you open the door and you're in a different country or something, and then you're like, she says, you ponder which pumpkin or perfume is yours. What do you mean? And it's there with the hair combs and the spices and somehow, just like in a dream, it looks familiar, it feels familiar, and yet it is surprising as well. So it's like all these different elements that are in there and that you're trying to hold together.
Yeah, she brings you into this moment when you start to question yourself. I start to have so much choice. And so which one should I take? And from choice comes choice. The more choice you have, the more choice you will get. So, it's like, shall I take this one or that one? Shall I go this direction or that direction? When you start to, in the beginning, you just had a problem. So in the beginning, you just had, where should I go? But now you have like opened all these different doors and all these different opportunities that you have, and it becomes kind of kind of a pleasure to even make it worse and to say, well, is the quandary edible or medical? Is it the problem of reason or grief? So in some way you become more and more abstract, and in the same time you get more and more physical. You know, is it reason? Is it something in my head? Is it grief? Is it a deep feeling?
Yeah.
Is it something that I need to eat so that I will become more, so that I grow? Or is it something where I already lost something and I need to bring it in, medical or edible? So there is this, like this really serious moments, but which are in the center of a like tornado that is all around you, and you see, oh, there's a chair, and wow, there's even a dog.
And that's where really life appears as well. I say that, incarnated with this bright dog, ready for the fetch.
That wants to please. I mean, that's something that we discover often in our work in generative change, that there is a part in us that really wants to please, that it's just there, curious, and wants to be called in some way, wants to be seen, and that goes in any possible direction, so that when you look at this part, you think, wow, this part is really full of life. That's probably what we need. If only she could ascertain which direction, what object, which scent of riddle. That this is the communication. The direction will be given by our intention, which is at the end of the day always something that has also a very mental component. So we try to connect the direction, the object, the scent of riddle to the bright dog. We try to make this connection. And then we start to be open to say, okay, now we are in the problem. Maybe we cannot solve it, because solving it would be just the mind. And we need both, or three of them. As you said, all the minds. But we can get inside the problem, Piana.
Yes, the idea is to move things around. I really like what you said about the dog, the bright dog. It's a bright dog, and it does want to please, just like just like Jung would say, the first part of your life belongs to other people. That's where you're trying to please, because you're trying to belong, because you evolve in a world that you've inherited, and that you don't know the rules, and people are going to teach you the rules, so to speak. And so you're trying to please because you want that, you want that love from people. How do we engage with that dog? Do we go in that direction? If we fix our attention in that direction, then we might get caught up too. So you do have to stay in this space where everything is in there, and it's moving, and it's changing, and it's there, and so what's going on? Just like have this curiosity, playfulness, this flexibility.
That's the mandala.
That's the mandala.
The soup, or the tea ceremony.
Yeah.
It's exactly where you can get to, and then the rest is just life. We will never it is none of all of that. It's not measured in foot-pounds, memory, or meat. We know that. It's not elliptical in its orbit, but this is what our mind can do with it. So we need to get away from that, at the same time connect together with our part, with the bright dog. And then what do we have at the end? Probably what we had in the beginning. We're almost there.
Mm. Yes, but the relationship you have with the problem has changed because of this recipe, because of these places you visited, the alleys you wandered through. And as you were saying, what we're trying to do is the verbal mind, what the verbal mind is trying to understand, there's certain a direction. We're so trained to look at things this way that it has to be measured. It has to be objective when we know it isn't. So, and in here, what I feel she's doing, but again, I'm looking it through my prism as well, is that it's all relational. What is your relationship with the problem? Let's have a different relationship with the problem.
Yeah, exactly. This is what changes. Yeah. At the beginning, you have a certain relationship to the problem. At the end, you have a different relationship to the problem. And we can do that again and again.
Yes. So that's a very playful, going around the world kind of, poem.
Yeah. So we brought different poems with us. Maybe we want to just listen to another one. If I could choose, I would propose the one that actually you brought in, Let This Darkness Be a Bell Tower by Rainer Maria Rilke.
Let this darkness be a bell tower. Quiet friend who has come so far. Feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what bothers you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am.
Beautiful. I could really feel the connection you have to that poem. This poem, in some ways, so much less fun than the one we had before. And it's so much more sense. For me, it's like a poem that is really going through my body. What he's trying to say, if become a bell, become a bell.
For me, it really is an invitation to be sensitive to what's going on around you and not reject it and be part of it this story when Steve talks about this poem, he always gives the context that Rilke used to live. Was it under or not too far from this bell tower that would ring every hour? So it was part of his environment, of his context. And the fact that, the darkness that we all sense at times, he compares it to this bell tower that you become the bell and you ring. But it's not just there, it's this, what batters you becomes your strength. So there is, this movement back and forth into the change. We know we all change. And so, okay. And so sometimes it's, it's a bit painful. And then there's this curiosity, what does it feel like? This intensity of pain. And the fact that at the very end, if the world has ceased to hear you, that's the disconnection. I flow. Say to the silent earth, I flow. And to the rushing waters speak, I am. If the world has ceased to hear you, I flow. I am. So it really is very intense for me, because it's like everything is there.
You can really enter this place and you will feel that you are more in life. In the German version, he says, if the world forgot about you, like there is this feeling from time to time that we are not only alone, but forgotten. And this is so, if you think of this bell that is so strong. I mean, it's a bell that is ringing day and night, every hour. And it's actually keeping Rilke awake. But being that bell can be really something isolated as well. So the invitation, if you feel isolated, if Earth forgot about you, doesn't hear you anymore, the bell doesn't hear the bell anymore, if you feel like me, the bell, is all there is, remember, I flow, I am. In German, the word I flow is ich rinne. And rinne is something that is losing a little bit all the time. It's not a flow where all is coming, everything that goes down also comes back from above. But it's really something, it's like when you're itching something or scratching on something and it becomes less and less. Rinnen is about becoming less and less. So I become less and less. Say that to the silent earth. This is how, it's like the wind, when you have these statues where the wind goes through and then they become less and less. They lose their appearance until the day where they disappear in the world. But this is how to get into the world. by disappearing into the world. So there is a reason maybe when the world doesn't hear us, or when the world forgets us, because we're doing something. We are at giving ourselves completely to the world. By Rinnen, losing ourselves. If we make a short connection to the poem that we were reading before, I think they really touch very intensively where it says, in this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. In some way, this is the center of that poem, offering a, let's say, mystic way of getting to the I am that we connect to at the end. And if we were talking about this tornado and being in the middle of that tornado, in some way that remembers me very much of the crossroad of your senses. You know, like we were saying, oh, you see a house, there you see a chair. So this is what happens all around us and what makes us confused, because it's in the storyline. And this is what happened through our senses. So there is this crossroad of our senses, which is like the eye of the tornado, where you can say, if I manage to get in there, and I do manage to get in there because I'm already halfway done, you know? I mean, I'm here. We actually know that we are at the center of this crossroad of our senses. So I can say, I am in here. I am the meaning of the whole thing. I am the meaning discovered there, discovered where there is nothing, in the eye of the tornado. And in the German version, he explains it even a little bit more. He says, ihrer seltsamen Begegnung Sinn. So you will be the sense, the meaning of the meeting between all the different senses. So all these senses meet, they make a story in some way, and the story does make no sense unless there is somebody in there who says I am.
Wow. Wow. That's very powerful.
Mm.
So we do lose in the translation. We knew that, but like that is even more obvious now.
You know, I see it the other way around. It's so beautiful to have these translations. And this one is done by Joanna, Macy, and Anita Barrows, which are two very engaged women, and so they really do a very good job, and it's helpful for everybody to get into contact with that. And I wouldn't speak even about English-speaking people, about English or American people. I would say it's helpful for a Peruvian who wants to meet Rilke. He will need that translation, because obviously we cannot all speak German. There is no reason to believe that. And at the same time, it can be so enriching if you just look at what Rilke said in the German version. It can also be very enriching to see what other people are doing in other translations. I would be very open for that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could talk about translations for hours. It's true that their words are linked to the cultures, to and even like we give subjective meaning to words as well according to our own experience. So people who because we create our reality when you come to think about it. That's what it is in the end. The first premise of generative change work, we cannot understand it the same way. And I think also that also gives us space to understand what we need to understand, or it gives us the ability to understand it from one place, and maybe tomorrow we'll understand it differently, and the day after or the moment after differently. And that's what life is about as well, is that even if the poem is written on black on white, and it's there and it's fixed, yet it's different each time you read it, because through you it has a life, it has a meaning, it has several meanings. And I really like this. I hadn't noticed so much this sentence, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses. It's at the same time as you're saying this safe spot in the middle of the tornado, because where you're in the middle, you're safe. And it's also, for me, it's like, what is it that you give attention to? What is it that your senses are pulled by the outside world? Can be. And so you can be giving your attention there, and you also can be this mystery. There's no explanation there required or needed, or it's okay to be the mystery.
When I read another poem?
Sure. Throw Yourself Like Seed by Miguel de Unamuno. Shake off the sadness and recover your spirit. Sluggish, you will never see the wheel of fate that brushes your heel as it turns going by. The man who wants to live is the man in whom life is abundant. Now you are only giving food to that final pain, which is slowly winding you in the nets of death. But to live is to work, and the only thing which lasts is the work. Start there. Turn to the work. Throw yourself like seed as you walk and into your own field. Don't turn your face, for that would be to turn it to death. And do not let the past weigh down your motion. Leave what's alive in the furrow, what's dead in yourself. For life does not move in the same way as a group of clouds. From your work, you will be able one day to gather yourself.
A difficult poem. I proposed it to this gathering with poems, and I'm always touched about this poem because of the music that you find in there. It's like there are very difficult parts in the reading as well. You can feel that when you voice it, when you take your voice and you make it alive. Then you don't know exactly how to read that, but there are other parts where you know exactly how to read it, and in which you fall in love at once, even. And this is the tough thing if you don't like the meaning. So this is for me a really beautiful example of how musicality of a poem can open you to something that otherwise you would probably plainly just deny. So an example for the musicality here would be like the throw yourself like seed. Throw yourself like seed as you walk and into your own feet. Wow, that's a beautiful going up and going down. Throw yourself like seed as you walk and into your own field. I always feel like you need to end into your own field, and you need to rush to go there so that nobody could misunderstand the thing. Throw yourself like seed as you walk. Yes, but where? Into your own field. Don't do that to the field of somebody else, where we come back to always connect first to yourself. Always connect first to yourself and only then connect to somebody else. But here, throw yourself like seed as you walk, and then you need to hurry and into your own field. Don't turn your face, for that would be to journey to death. That's really full into music. And for me, this poem was really, because it was a poem, I heard that from Steve several times, probably 3 or 4 times. And I always thought, wow, that's really a beautiful poem, but I never really read it. So I had this physical connection. I had this connection with its musicality, but I had actually no idea what it really was about. And then when you start to read it aloud, which means to take your time to read it several times, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, every time listening to what you said, can be very helpful to record it so that you can listen to it afterwards even. And then something comes like, sluggish, you will never see the wheel of fate. Wow, that hurts. Sluggish, you will never see the wheel of fate that brushes your heel as it turns going by. There's something I could miss. Now you're only giving food to that final pain, which is slowly winding you in the nets of death. So he's really not nice to me. And this is a different, this is, if we compare to what we heard with Jane Hirshfield, like, remember, you're trying to solve a problem. You're almost certainly halfway done, maybe more. This is so inclusive. All is good. But here, you're slowly being winded in the nets of death. It's a completely different way of looking at things. And probably not everybody can say yes to what he's saying here. But you can feel the power that is in there. And that is what I connect to, more than to a specific belief.
Yes, and as I read it today, I read it completely differently from the first time you wanted us to talk about it. As I told you, I don't like this poem. He's telling me to work. I don't like this guy. But I like the way you introduced it and you compared it to Jane Hirshfield's poem, because it's true. He's just like this different kind of coach too. Like he's the confronting coach, He's like, shake it off, buddy. Recover your spirit. Shake off this sadness. What is this? You think it's going to get you somewhere? It's not going to get you anywhere. So it is something that you need to sometimes hear as well, depending on where you are, and then that's what Steve, when he talks about Milton Erickson and this young boy, like that's the image that I got, is the young boy who like stump his feet. Is like, is that the best you can do? Can't you hit it harder? Can't you hit like 100 times harder? And so it's like, it's very confronting that way, and so it makes sense as well, depending on where you are.
So here the work has such a positive feeling. To live is to work. And the only thing which lasts is the work. Start then. Turn to the work. There's something urgent in there. The world needs us. If you don't go to the work, if you don't turn to the work, well, what will you do then? So you could say in some way, turn to the work means also grow. Throw yourself like seed and see what happens. So this is really, for me, it was a shock. Because I think this is really the sweet thing about poems. I love the music. I didn't get into connection with this poem because I thought now I need to learn something about the work. But actually it's not that it happened instantaneously. It was something that, with the time I started to have this sentence more and more in my mind, that to live is to work. And the only thing which lasts is the work. Start and turn to the work. That has such a melody that was like confusing me. And it's like when you're smelling all the time a perfume, and then you start by the time to just behave a little bit different.
I find this idea of work very interesting, because there again, it's very linked to the language. Like I know in Arabic, work is khdem, which is in my dialect, and it's the same root as blood, meaning that work is life. You live, you work, basically. Whereas in French, the travail is linked to something that's torturous. So then you get people in the street, demonstrating. So it really is what does the culture give meaning to the work, to the word and to work. And so we see there's multiple meanings and possibilities, and infinite possibilities there again, thanks to the translation, thanks to poetry that doesn't necessarily bring things in a very straight way. It really is. I like this idea of leaving it to your own interpretation. You look at something, you listen to something, you watch something, and it's really what it's going to do to you that is true.
So it's interesting because we had one American poem right now, which is the one from Jane Hirshfield, who is also a big translator, especially of Japanese works. She has a book about women's works in the Far East, let's say, that she translated. Then we have a poem by a German author. We have a poem by a Spanish author. If you want, we could finish by turning towards an author that is, Persian. Started his life in the east of Iran and finished its life in Konya, which is in Turkey nowadays. Rumi.
This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
Thank you.
It's like a healing, it's like a medication. It's like just reading it just does that to you. It's beautiful.
I was just thinking how we could wrap up a little bit what we were doing in this session. And the idea that a poem can become a healing, can become a drug in the sense of a medicament. The European always have that, because drug. That is something, and I mean, we were going through all these poems and we were seeing how we find time after time a lot of principles that we recognize in generative change. And a poem is such a small thing. You can have it in your pocket. You can have it on your phone. And what I really want to recommend to everybody is to read poems aloud, to give them a voice. It's like the poems deserve that. They deserve being discovered. So, as you were saying, often when we read a poem a first time or a second time, as we did in school, and then that's it, then you just don't get it. It's too articulated, to really put into the, a poet is trying to find the best words and putting it at the best place. So you need to go through that in some way. And that takes time. But when you do that, the reward is that you get this healing, joy.
Yes. Yes, if I were to invite people to do something, it would be as well to read the poem aloud and give it a voice and give it your voice and give it your story and give it your meaning and let yourself sense what it does to you time after time. And as you were saying, a poem, even a short poem, you were talking about the haikus translated by Jane Hirshfield, 4 or 5 sentences, not more. And they could also be in your head, And sometimes I do use these poems, like I did this very morning. I use them to just like shift my state a bit. I listen to it, and my state that needed shifting is shifted a bit, and it moved a bit. And yes, I could do that. I could welcome them at the door laughing, or I could throw myself like seed. So many choices. I could put some salt and alum, or I could just let myself be battered by the bell. And there's so many ways. How like we say, how many ways do you have to get into a coach state? That's one of them. reading a poem, feeling what it does to you, and just be. I am.